The message was never meant to change history. It was written in desperation, translated into half a dozen broken trade languages, and sent from a drifting station on the edge of known space. The coalition that sent it had already lost 3 worlds. Their fleets were shattered. Their allies were silent. The galaxy had decided they were not worth saving. The message was simple. They asked for protection. Most powers ignored it. Some responded with polite regret. A few sent warnings telling them to surrender quietly and avoid unnecessary suffering. One message went to humanity, not because the coalition believed humans could help, but because there was no one else left to ask. Humanity was considered irrelevant. A young species. Loud. Divided. Always arguing among themselves. They had fought wars, yes, but small ones. Local ones. Nothing compared to the ancient empires that ruled the stars. The coalition leaders expected silence. They got nothing for 3 days. On the 4th day, long-range sensors screamed. Unknown ships had appeared at the edge of the system, not emerging from known jump points, not using recognized drives. They were simply there. The coalition's last defense fleet scrambled, weapons half-powered, crews exhausted and afraid. When visuals came through, confusion spread across every command deck. These were not warships. At least, not in the way the galaxy understood warships. The first vessels were massive command carriers, dark, angular, quiet. They broadcast no threats, no banners, no demands. Their hulls were marked only with small, human symbols no one could read. Behind them came something stranger. Huge construction ships. Slow, broad, covered in folded frameworks and dormant machines. Ships meant to build, not fight. And far behind those, far enough to make sensors struggle, waited a third group. Bombers. They did not advance. They did not form attack lines. They simply held position, motionless, like distant shadows against the stars. The coalition leaders gathered in their central chamber, staring at the projection in silence. "These are the humans?" one asked. A translator drone confirmed it. Fear followed confusion. Why would a species send builders to a war zone? A tight beam transmission cut through the room. Calm. Humans. Unemotional. "This is Commander Hale of the United Human Expeditionary Authority," the voice said. "We received your request. No apology. No questions. Just confirmation." The coalition leader forced their voice steady. You came with no battle fleet." There was a pause. No hesitation. Consideration. "We came with what you asked for," the human replied. Protection. Outside the station, the command ships began deploying sensor nets that blanketed the system. Builders moved forward, releasing swarms of machines that unfolded into skeletal structures around planets, stations, and moons. Energy shields flickered into existence where there had been none before. The coalition watched in stunned silence as their dying worlds were suddenly wrapped in light. "What are you doing?" someone whispered. "Preparing," Commander Hale said. "You told us where it hurts. Now we make it stop." Alarms flared again, this time from deep space. Enemy fleets were inbound. The raiders who had bled the coalition dry had finally come to finish the job. They outnumbered the humans. Outgunned them. Their weapons were ancient and brutal. The coalition turned back to the human channel, panic breaking through. "You need to leave. They will destroy you." The response was immediate. "No," Commander Hale said. "They will not." The builders did not retreat. They accelerated. Platforms locked into place. Defensive arrays activated. The command ships moved subtly, repositioning, not to attack, but to observe. The enemy fleet crossed the system boundary and slowed, confused by the sudden forest of human-made structures blocking their usual approach. They opened fire anyway. The first volley struck the new defenses. Nothing broke. The coalition held its breath as shields absorbed impacts that would have shattered cities hours earlier. Human systems adjusted in real time, redistributing power, reinforcing weak points before they could fail. Still, the enemy pressed forward. That was when the bombers moved. Not fast. Not dramatic. They advanced just enough for the galaxy to notice them. The enemy commanders froze. These bombers were wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. Their weapon signatures were unreadable. No known doctrine matched their formation. A final transmission came from the human commander. "To the forces entering this system," Hale said calmly, broadcasting on open channels. "You are trespassing in a protected zone." Protected. The word carried weight it had never held before. "You have one chance to turn back. The enemy responded with laughter and another barrage. The bombers did not chase them. They fired once. Space folded inward. A supply carrier vanished, not exploded, not shattered, simply erased. A command ship went dark, drifting powerless. Navigation arrays across the enemy fleet failed at the same moment. Panic spread faster than any weapon. The coalition watched as the invaders realized something terrible. Humanity was not here to fight a battle. They were here to end a pattern. The bombers powered down again, waiting. Commander Hale's voice returned, colder now. "This was a demonstration," he said. "Next time, we remove your ability to threaten anyone, anywhere." The enemy fleet began to retreat in chaos, broken without ever truly being engaged. Silence followed. In the coalition chamber, no one spoke. Relief battled fear. Gratitude tangled with a new, unsettling thought. If this was how humans protected others, what did they do to their enemies? As the builders continued constructing defenses and the bombers held their dark vigil, the coalition realized the galaxy had made a mistake long ago. They had ignored humanity, and now humanity has arrived. The stars were watching, and this was only the beginning. The galaxy noticed the silence before it noticed the humans. Trade lanes that had once pulsed with traffic went strangely quiet around the coalition's systems. Raiders who had bragged openly about easy prey stopped posting victory claims. Informal bounty boards removed listings tied to those worlds without explanation. It was not fear yet, just uncertainty. And uncertainty, in a galaxy built on prediction, was dangerous. Inside the coalition's command station, relief began to decay into something sharper. The enemy fleet had retreated, yes, but it had not been destroyed. And everyone knew what that meant. They would return, stronger, angrier, with witnesses. The coalition leaders stood beneath the star map, watching human-built structures continue to assemble themselves with patient precision. Rings of defense locked into orbit. Energy relays connected planets like threads of light. Construction drones worked without pause, ignoring the exhaustion that plagued organic crews. "Why are they still building?" one counselor asked quietly. "They have already scared the enemy away," another replied. "Is that not enough?" No one answered. Because deep down, they all understood the truth. This was not a temporary shield. This was infrastructure. Commander Hale met with the coalition leadership only after the first defensive layer was complete. The human appeared via projection. No uniform decorations, no visible weapons. "Calm eyes. Steady posture. You should evacuate your non-essential populations," Hale said, as if discussing weather patterns. The chamber stirred. "Evacuate?" the coalition leader asked. "But you said the system is protected." "It is," Hale replied. "That does not mean it will be untouched." That was the first crack in the illusion of safety. Reports began flooding in from beyond the system. Other powers were asking questions, demanding data, requesting scans of the human ships. Several empires sent observers to nearby space under the excuse of neutral monitoring. And then came the laughter. Galactic media networks began running segments mocking the situation. Commentators scoffed at the idea of humans acting as protectors. Analysts replayed old human conflicts, painting them as unstable, overly emotional, incapable of sustaining large-scale operations. "Temporary luck," one expert declared. "A parlor trick. The bombers are a bluff." Another claimed the builders were a sign of weakness. "They are fortifying because they know they cannot survive a real assault." The coalition watched these broadcasts in silence. They wanted to believe the humans would respond, issue warnings, flex their power again. The humans did not. Instead, Commander Hale expanded operations. Human commanders arrived next, not in fleets, but in data. Strategic teams linked into coalition systems, quietly reorganizing defenses, supply chains, and command hierarchies. Old doctrines were questioned, inefficient traditions removed. Some coalition officers resisted. They did not last. Not because the humans threatened them, but because the numbers stopped lying. Food shortages vanished. Repair times dropped. Response speed tripled. Human planners anticipated raids before they happened, redirecting patrols hours in advance. Still, the galaxy laughed. Until the First Empire moved. The Karth Dominion had ruled its sector for centuries. They did not raid. They conquered. And they did not tolerate uncertainty near their borders. When their scouts reported human structures spreading across coalition space, The Dominion Senate debated for exactly 12 minutes. Then they authorized a disciplinary incursion. The Dominion fleet was vast. Layered armor, heavy cannons, doctrines refined through generations of war. Their admirals had crushed species older than humanity itself. They announced their arrival publicly. The message was broadcast on every open channel. This space is under Dominion authority. Withdraw immediately or be removed. The coalition panicked. They begged the humans to respond. Commander Hale did not. Instead, the human commanders quietly shifted positions. Builders accelerated production. Bombers repositioned, still far, still waiting. The Dominion fleet crossed the border. This time, there was no warning shot. The Dominion attacked the outermost human structures, unleashing firepower that would have erased moons. The defenses held. Not barely, comfortably. Dominion captains reported something impossible. Their weapons were being studied mid-impact, adjusted against, countered before damage thresholds were reached. It was as if the defenses were learning. The Dominion admiral ordered a deeper push. That was when the humans responded. Not with bombers. With silence. Dominion command links began to lag. Communications flickered. Targeting solutions failed. Fleets drifted slightly out of formation, just enough to break mutual coverage. Then a message appeared. Human encryption, forced open on Dominion systems. Commander Hale's voice carried no anger. You were warned by others, Hale said. You chose not to listen. The Dominion laughed. Then the builders stopped building. They retracted. Not retreating, reconfiguring. Entire defensive platforms folded inward, revealing weapons no one had scanned before. Not cannons. Not missiles. Arrays designed to shape space itself. The first strike did not destroy a ship. It removed it. A Dominion cruiser ceased to exist between one sensor ping and the next. No debris. No explosion. Just absence. The Dominion admiral screamed orders. Too late. Human bombers advanced. Not rushing. Not chasing. They fired in sequence, each strike cutting away at the Dominion fleet's cohesion. Fuel depots vanished. Command ships lost power. Reinforcement corridors collapsed into unusable distortions. The Dominion had brought a war. The humans were dismantling it. Across the galaxy, the laughter stopped. Observers recorded everything. Analysts froze mid-sentence as the data shattered their assumptions. This was not raw strength. This was preparation beyond comprehension. The Dominion fleet broke. Not routed. Broken. Survivors fled in scattered fragments, abandoning formations that had held for centuries. The bombers did not pursue. The humans let them run. Silence returned. In the coalition chamber, the leaders stared at the star map as Dominion territory dimmed, supply routes disrupted, influence shaken. What happens now? One counselor asked. Commander Hale appeared again. Now, Hale said, others will test us. As if summoned by the words, new signals began to appear at the edge of known space. Fleets repositioning. Alliances shifting. Old enemies reconsidering ancient grudges. The galaxy was adjusting. Humanity had not declared war. They had declared relevance. And everyone was afraid of what would come next. Fear did not spread through the galaxy like fire. It spread like gravity. Slow at first. Invisible. Then impossible to escape. In the weeks after the Dominion's retreat, ships stopped crossing certain borders. Merchant guilds rewrote their routes to avoid coalition space. Not out of hostility, but caution. Empires that once boasted of unstoppable fleets quietly increased military budgets and ordered historical archives reopened. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How long had humanity been planning this? Inside the coalition systems, life began to change in ways no one had expected. Human builders did not leave after the battle. They expanded. Entire orbital cities took shape where broken debris fields once drifted. Shipyards appeared near stars that had never known industry. Energy grids stabilized planets long plagued by shortages. The coalition worlds were no longer surviving. They were stabilizing. That terrified the galaxy far more than any battle. Coalition citizens watched human crews work with unsettling calm. They did not celebrate victories. They did not demand praise. They spoke in schedules and probabilities, always focused on what came next. Human commanders rotated in and out of the system, not as conquerors, but as caretakers of conflict. They trained coalition officers without mocking their mistakes. They explained tactics patiently, as if expecting these allies to stand on their own someday. This, too, was wrong. The galaxy had seen protectors before. They always demanded something in return. Humanity demanded preparation. Commander Hale met again with coalition leadership, this time in person aboard a human command vessel. The ship's interior was stark, functional, quiet, designed for clarity rather than intimidation. "You will be tested again," Hale said, "sooner than the last time." The coalition leader nodded, fear tight in their posture. "By whom?" Hale did not answer immediately. Instead, a projection filled the chamber, dozens of star systems highlighted across multiple sectors. "By everyone," Hale said. As if on cue, the first probe arrived. It was small, unarmed, marked as a scientific vessel from a neutral federation. Its stated mission was observation. Human sensors tracked it the moment it appeared. The probe scanned defenses, recorded energy emissions, and attempted to map bomber formations from extreme range. Humanity allowed it. The probe returned home. Within days, a second probe arrived, then a third. Then entire observation flotillas began positioning themselves just outside coalition space. The galaxy was no longer laughing. They were measuring. Then came the second test. Not an empire, not a raiding fleet, a coalition ally. A neighboring power that had once promised mutual defense sent a formal message requesting temporary access to human-built infrastructure. They claimed it was for trade efficiency. Human commanders reviewed the request for exactly 9 minutes. Then they refused. No explanation. No negotiation. The ally protested publicly, accusing humanity of hoarding power and destabilizing the region. The galaxy watched closely. Humanity did nothing. Trade resumed. Life continued. The accusation faded. But the lesson remained. Human protection was not shared casually. The third test was blood. A pirate confederation, smaller than the Dominion, but crueler, launched a surprise attack on a fringe coalition moon. They avoided main defenses, slipping through debris corridors they had used for years. Coalition forces scrambled, terrified this would be the moment the illusion shattered. Human bombers did not deploy. Instead, something else moved. Human commanders activated systems the coalition had never been briefed on. The pirate fleet found their drives failing mid-attack. Not destroyed, not jammed, rewritten. Navigation data corrupted itself. Weapons locked into safe mode. Life support flickered as automated safety overrides kicked in to prevent cascading failure. The pirates were trapped, alive, powerless, drifting. Coalition forces arrived minutes later to find the enemy intact and helpless. Humanity had not killed them. They had disarmed the threat completely. Across the galaxy, analysts argued violently. Some called it mercy. Others called it cruelty refined into something worse. One truth was undeniable. Humanity was choosing how violence existed. That realization forced ancient powers to confront a terrifying possibility. If humans could limit war, they could also remove it, or reshape it. The fourth test arrived in secret. An ancient empire, older than the Dominion, wiser, quieter, sent diplomats under full cloak. They requested a private audience with humanity. The coalition was not invited. The meeting took place in deep space, far from any star. When it ended, no statements were released. But 3 days later, the ancient empire quietly withdrew its fleets from half a dozen contested systems and reopened peace talks it had frozen centuries ago. The galaxy felt the shift. Power was moving, not exploding, sliding. Coalition leaders began to realize the true scope of what was happening. Humanity was not defending them alone. They were changing incentives. War was becoming expensive, inefficient, predictable, and humanity was always one step ahead. That frightened even the coalition. "What happens when you leave?" one counselor finally asked during a late-night briefing. Commander Hale looked at them for a long moment. "We will," Hale said. "Eventually." The counselor swallowed. "And if someone attacks after that?" Hale's expression did not change. "Then you will respond," Hale said. "With what we leave behind." That was when the coalition understood. The builders were not just building defenses. They were building successors. Humanity did not want eternal guardianship. They wanted permanence through preparation. But the galaxy was not tested. The largest test had not yet arrived. Sensors flared across multiple sectors at once. Fleets repositioned. Old rivals aligned. Temporary coalitions formed around a single shared concern. Humanity. For the first time in recorded history, several major powers began coordinating, not to conquer, but to contain. The coalition received the data and felt dread unlike anything before. They turned to the humans. "This is too much," the coalition leader said. "They will overwhelm you." Commander Hale studied the projections calmly. "They will try," Hale said. Bombers began to move, not toward the enemy, but outward, expanding their presence, casting long shadows across trade routes and hyperlanes. Human command ships repositioned to key junctions. Builders halted civilian projects and began assembling something new, structures larger than anything yet revealed. The galaxy leaned forward, holding its breath. This was no longer about protection. This was about whether humanity would allow itself to be surrounded. The coalition realized, with sudden clarity, that they were standing beside something far older than they appeared. Not in years. In patience. As the first multi-empire fleets began accelerating toward coalition space, Commander Hale issued a final internal directive. Phase 3, Hale said. Human systems acknowledged in perfect unison. And across the galaxy, every power felt it. Something fundamental was about to change. Not because humanity was angry, but because humanity has finished pretending to be small. Phase 3 did not begin with explosions. That was the first thing everyone got wrong. Across the galaxy, analysts waited for fire, for a preemptive strike, for humanity to finally reveal some terrible superweapon and shatter fleets before they could close in. Nothing like that happened. Instead, traffic slowed. Then it stopped. At first, it looked like a coincidence. A delayed convoy here. A missed synchronization window there. Then entire hyperlanes began failing at once. Jump calculations returning impossible results. Navigation buoys reporting contradictory coordinates. Automated pilots refusing to engage. Merchants cursed. Admirals demanded answers. Humanity said nothing. Inside coalition space, Commander Hale stood before a layered projection showing the galaxy's primary trade arteries. One by one, they dimmed, not destroyed, not blocked, simply unreliable. "We are isolating variables," Hale said calmly to the coalition leadership. "Not enemies." The coalition leaders stared at the map. "You're slowing the galaxy." "Yes," Hale replied. Just enough for them to think. The surrounding empires felt it almost immediately. Supply chains strained. Fuel prices spiked. Peripheral systems began rationing power. Fleets found themselves delayed by hours, then days, then weeks. No shots were fired. No borders crossed. Yet pressure mounted everywhere. That was when the accusations began. Humanity was blamed for destabilizing commerce, for manipulating spacetime, for holding the galaxy hostage. Emergency councils convened. Threats were drafted. Ultimatums prepared. Still, humanity remained silent. The coalition, however, was not. For the first time in their history, coalition diplomats were invited to speak at major galactic forums. Their words carried weight now, not because of their fleets, but because of who stood behind them. And what they said unsettled everyone. "We asked for protection," the coalition envoy said, "and we received it. No territory was taken. No tribute demanded. If you feel threatened, ask yourselves why." That question echoed across countless chambers. The encircling fleets continued to gather. Dozens of powers, ancient rivals, uneasy allies, former enemies, drawn together by the same fear. Humanity had changed the rules, and no one knew what those rules were now. At the center of it all, the human builders unveiled their next work. It was not a weapon. It was a gate. Not a jump gate. Not a wormhole. Something new. A massive structure assembled in deep space between major sectors. It pulsed softly, stabilizing regions of space long known for unpredictability. Traveling through it was safer, cheaper, faster. Humanity opened it to civilian traffic only. Military vessels were politely refused access. The galaxy was stunned. Trade rerouted overnight. Independent systems flourished. Smaller powers gained leverage. Empires that relied on controlled choke points saw their influence weaken. Humanity was not conquering space. They were redesigning it. One admiral finally broke ranks. The Supreme Marshal of the Valerian Combine, renowned for his caution, requested direct talks with humanity. Not threats. No demands. Questions. The meeting took place under human terms. No escorts. No weapons. No recording devices. When the Marshal returned, he resigned 2 days later. No explanation was given. But the Valerian Combine withdrew its fleet from the encirclement. Others followed. Not all. Some powers could not accept a galaxy they did not dominate. Those powers chose force. The first coordinated strike came without warning. 3 fleets jumping simultaneously toward coalition space, bypassing traditional lanes using dangerous experimental drives. They arrived battered, unstable, but determined. This time, humanity responded immediately. Bombers did not fire. Commanders did not speak. Instead, the builders activated structures that had been quietly placed months earlier, anchors embedded in local spacetime. The attacking fleets found themselves slowed, then halted, their momentum bleeding away as if space itself resisted them. Human bombers advanced, not to attack, but to surround. A single message broadcast across all channels. "You have crossed a line we deliberately made visible," Commander Hale said. "Turn back." The attackers fired. That was when humanity demonstrated restraint as a weapon. They did not destroy the fleets. They disassembled them. Weapons overheated and shut down. Drives locked into permanent safe mode. Hulls were sliced open, not explosively, but surgically, exposing systems to vacuum without harming crews. Ships were left drifting, intact, alive, humiliated. Rescue corridors opened immediately afterward. Humanity allowed recovery. The message was unmistakable. Violence would not be rewarded, but it will be remembered. Across the galaxy, fear shifted shape. This was not the fear of annihilation. It was the fear of irrelevance. Empires realized they could no longer force outcomes. They could no longer rush humanity into mistakes. Every aggressive move only revealed how far behind they truly were. Coalition leaders struggled with their own unease. "You're turning them against you," one counselor warned. "No," Hale replied. "They are turning against old habits." The final challenge came not from fleets, but from within humanity's own reputation. A coalition historian uncovered ancient human records, wars, genocides, internal collapses. They brought the data forward hesitantly, afraid of offending their protectors. "You were once like them," the historian said. "Why are you different now?" Commander Hale did not deny it. "We learned," Hale said simply, "at great cost." The coalition began to understand the emotional core beneath the precision. Humanity was not preventing war because they were merciful. They were preventing it because they remembered what endless war did to them. The encirclement finally collapsed, not in defeat, but in surrender to reality. Powers withdrew fleets quietly. Trade normalized under new routes. Negotiations reopened across dozens of systems. Humanity never declared victory. They did not need to. Builders began transitioning projects to coalition control. Human commanders reduced their presence, leaving advisors behind. The bombers remained, always watching, always waiting. As the galaxy settled into its new shape, a single thought spread everywhere, from imperial thrones to pirate dens to quiet frontier worlds. If humanity ever stopped holding back, there would be nothing left to fight. And that, more than any weapon, kept the peace. At the edge of coalition space, Commander Hale watched the stars in silence. Phase 3 was complete. Phase 4 would be different. Because now, the galaxy knows the truth. Humanity was not guarding a border. They were guarding the future. And next time, they would decide who was ready to be part of it. The galaxy did not collapse after Phase 3. That, more than anything, unsettled humanity's observers. Markets did not crash. Stars did not burn. Empires did not fall overnight. Instead, something far more dangerous happened. The galaxy adapted. Coalition analysts were the first to notice the pattern. Trade resumed, but differently. Fleets moved less, but with greater intent. Borders hardened, not with weapons, but with treaties written in careful language that avoided certain phrases. Words like force, words like retaliation, words like human. Old powers began experimenting, not with weapons, but with influence. Cultural blocks formed. Economic pressure replaced gunfire. Proxy conflicts erupted far from coalition space, testing whether humanity's reach was local or universal. Commander Hale watched these developments with quiet focus. "They are learning the wrong lesson," one human strategist observed. Hale nodded. "That always comes first." Inside coalition territory, the shift was deeply personal. The people were no longer afraid of invasion. That fear had been replaced by something heavier: responsibility. Human builders began transferring control of major systems. Defense platforms now responded to coalition command codes. Supply algorithms were handed over with full transparency. Training simulations ran day and night, pushing coalition crews past exhaustion into competence. Human advisors remained, but they stopped giving answers. They started asking questions. "What do you do?" one advisor asked a coalition captain during an exercise, "when no one is coming to save you?" The captain hesitated. "That hesitation," the advisor said calmly, "is what kills civilizations." Not all coalition leaders welcomed this change. Some had grown comfortable under human protection. Stability bred dependency. Quiet voices began whispering that humanity should stay longer, permanently. When this reached Commander Hale, the response was immediate. A closed-door meeting was called. "You asked us for protection," Hale said to the assembled leaders. "Not guardianship." "We are not ready," one counselor argued. "The galaxy still fears you. They respect you. When you leave—" Hale raised a hand. "We are not leaving," Hale said. "We are stepping back." The distinction mattered, and frightened them more. Beyond coalition space, the first true countermeasure was unveiled. It came from the Aurelian Compact, an alliance of mid-tier powers known for innovation rather than brute force. They announced a new doctrine: distributed autonomy. Fleets that could function without central command. Economies that could reroute instantly. Societies designed to absorb disruption. They did not name humanity. They did not need to. The galaxy watched closely. Humanity responded by doing nothing. No condemnation. No escalation. Instead, human bombers repositioned farther outward. Less visible, less central. Builders ceased constructing new megastructures and focused instead on maintenance and education. Observers misread this as hesitation. It was not. Inside human command space, Phase 4 began. Not as a military operation. As a test. Human systems began quietly withdrawing from select coalition defenses. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just enough to create gaps. The coalition noticed. Panic flared briefly, then discipline took hold. Coalition fleets responded. Systems compensated. New commanders stepped up, making imperfect but decisive calls. A pirate group attempted a raid through one of the weakened corridors. They were repelled. Not by humans. By the coalition alone. The report reached Commander Hale within minutes. Hale allowed themselves a rare, small breath. They chose correctly, Hale said. But the galaxy did not stop pushing. Aurelian observers released data suggesting humanity's control over space-time infrastructure was not absolute. That with enough coordination, it could be countered. The implication was clear. Humanity was powerful, but not inevitable. This emboldened others. A shadow coalition formed, not openly hostile, but resistant. They began stockpiling resources, coordinating research, preparing for a future where humanity might decide to impose terms. They framed it as self-defense. They always did. The first real fracture came not from an enemy, but from an ally. A coalition world, newly prosperous under human-built infrastructure, declared partial independence from coalition authority. They demanded exclusive trade rights through a nearby human gate. Humanity refused. The world accused humanity of manipulation. The galaxy leaned in. This was the moment everyone had waited for. Would humanity punish defiance? Would they withdraw protection? Would they reveal the iron beneath the restraint? Commander Hale traveled personally to the system. No fleet followed. Just one ship. The meeting took place on the surface, under a pale sky still scarred from old bombardments. "You built our future," the planetary leader said bitterly. "Now you deny us control over it." Hale did not argue. "You mistake effort for ownership," Hale said. "We did not build this for you. We built it with you." "That's a convenient distinction," the leader snapped. Hale looked across the city, at towers rebuilt by human hands, now maintained by local engineers. "If you wish to leave the coalition," Hale said, "you may. We will not stop you." The leader faltered. "And the gate?" Hale's voice was steady. "The gate remains neutral, as it was always meant to be." The world backed down, not because of fear, but because they realized something too late. Humanity was not hoarding power. They were refusing to personalize it. That made it impossible to steal. The Shadow Coalition accelerated its plans. Simulations were run. Scenarios mapped. One outcome appeared again and again. Direct conflict failed. Indirect pressure stalled. Containment collapsed. There was only one remaining path: integration. The galaxy began to change tone. Not submission, but negotiation. Humanity received requests, not for protection, but for guidance, for access to doctrines, for inclusion in gate networks, for joint oversight. The coalition watched as powers that once laughed now waited in line. Commander Hale convened a final briefing. The era of protection is ending, Hale said. The era of participation is beginning. Human bombers repositioned again, not outward this time, but inward, taking positions that suggested permanence without dominance. Builders transitioned entirely into advisory roles. The message was subtle, but unmistakable. Humanity would no longer hold the galaxy together alone. They would insist the galaxy holds itself. Some would fail, some would resist, but enough would adapt. And that was all humanity had ever needed. As Hale stood before the stars one last time, a report came in. News signals, distant, faint. A civilization far beyond known space had detected the gates. They were watching. The galaxy had survived humanity's arrival. The next question was far more unsettling. Would the galaxy survive being introduced to itself? Phase 4 had done its work. Phase 5 would decide what kind of future deserved to exist. The first signal did not come through a gate. That alone set every human system on alert. It emerged from beyond mapped space, beyond the furthest long-range sensors humanity had quietly seeded over decades. A thin, repeating pattern, mathematical, intentional, patient. It did not request contact. It did not announce itself. It was observed. Human analysts stared at the data in silence. Coalition scientists were brought in, then dismissed just as quickly. This was not a moment for shared panic. This was a moment for clarity. Commander Hale reviewed the projections personally. They waited, Hale said. That tells us everything. The signal repeated every 72 hours. Always the same structure. Always slightly adjusted, as if learning from the galaxy's response to its presence. Someone, something, was watching the watchers. The coalition was informed only after humanity reached consensus. There is another power, Hale told the assembled leaders. Older than the current order. Possibly older than us. Fear rippled through the chamber. Are they hostile? A counselor asked. Hale shook their heads. They haven't decided yet. That answer was worse. Across the galaxy, rumors spread faster than facts ever could. Fringe worlds whispered of ancient custodians returning. Religious sects claimed prophecy. Empires quietly panicked, accelerating weapons programs they had frozen under human pressure. The Shadow Coalition fractured overnight. Some wanted humanity to take full control again, to stand as a shield between the galaxy and the unknown. Others argued that humanity had caused this attention by reshaping space itself. For the first time since their arrival, humanity became a point of open debate rather than quiet fear. Human command did not respond publicly. Instead, Phase 5 began. The gates changed. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in function. Access rules shifted. Traffic patterns adjusted. Information latency dropped. Entire regions of the galaxy became more transparent to one another, their data flowing faster than politics could slow it. Humanity was forcing shared awareness. Coalition leaders felt it immediately. Incidents that once took weeks to surface were now known within hours. Secret troop movements were exposed. Economic manipulations lost their subtlety. Power was being dragged into the light. Why now? The coalition leader asked Hale during a private exchange. Because secrecy is a luxury, Hale replied. You only have it when no one is watching. The unknown signal changed. For the first time, it responded. Not to humanity, to the galaxy. Every major communications network received the same transmission simultaneously. It bypassed encryption, ignored firewalls, appeared on screens from imperial thrones to pirate dens. A single statement, translated perfectly into every known language. Demonstrate coherence. No threat. No greeting. A requirement. Panic erupted. What did coherence mean? Unity? Stability? Obedience? Empires accused one another of provoking this. Old grudges reignited. Fleets mobilized, not to fight the unknown, but to position themselves advantageously in whatever judgment might come. Humanity did not mobilize. They grounded fleets. Bombers held position. Command ships powered down non-essential systems. Builders halted all non-critical activity. The galaxy mistook restraint for paralysis. It was not. Humanity released archives. Not weapons data. Not tactical plans. History. Human history. Unedited. Unpolished. The wars. The collapses. The genocides. The long, brutal climb out of self-destruction. They released it all. Freely, publicly, without justification. The galaxy recoiled. Some called it weakness. Others called it manipulation. The unknown signal paused. Then shifted again. This time, it addressed humanity directly. You persist. Hale stood alone in the command chamber when the reply was authorized. We adapt, Hale said. Or we end. There was no response. Days passed. The galaxy teetered on the edge of catastrophe, not from invasion, but from its own inability to agree on what the moment demanded. Some powers proposed unified fleets. Others demanded sacrifices. A few fringe empires attempted to seize territory under the excuse of preparation. Humanity intervened once. Not with force. They shut down a gate. A single, critical corridor that fed half a dozen expansionist powers. Trade froze. Military stalled. The message was immediate and unmistakable. Chaos would not be subsidized. The coalition watched humanity carefully now, not as protectors, but as referees of survival. The unknown signal returned for the final time. This time, it did not broadcast. It opened a window. Space folded. Not violently, not destructively, revealing a region beyond known dimensions. Structures unlike any known technology hovered in a slow, deliberate arrangement. No weapons visible. No fleets. Just presence. The observers had arrived. They did not speak. They projected. Images flooded human sensors. Entire civilizations reduced to static. Galaxies locked in endless war until nothing remained. Species that reached outward without restraint, consuming until collapse followed. Then, something new. Humanity, not as conquerors, as interrupters. The projection lingered on human-built gates, stabilizing volatile regions. On bombers choosing not to fire. On builders leaving behind systems they did not control. The observers finally spoke. You restrict yourselves. Hale answered without hesitation. Yes. Why? Because we remember what happens when we don't. Silence followed, longer than any before. Across the galaxy, fleets froze in place. Trade halted. Even pirates waited. The observers processed. This galaxy is unstable, the voice said at last. But it is not accelerating toward collapse. The implication was clear. Humanity has not saved the galaxy. They had slowed its fall. We will not intervene, the observers continued. Intervention breeds dependency. Hale felt the weight of every life behind those words. What happens now? Hale asked. Now, the observers replied. We watch what you do without us. The window closed. The signal vanished. The galaxy exhaled as one. The celebration did not follow. Instead, something quieter settled in. Responsibility. Humanity addressed the galaxy openly for the first time. There will be no final protection, Hale said, broadcast everywhere. No ultimate shield. What exists now exists because enough of you chose not to burn it down. Human bombers powered down permanently, transitioning to deterrence platforms under joint oversight. Builders transferred the last of their systems to coalition and multi-power councils. Gates became shared infrastructure, governed by collective rule. Humanity stepped back, not into obscurity, into parity. The coalition stood on its own for the first time in generations. Empires redefined success, not as expansion, but endurance. Conflicts still happened, but they ended faster, constrained by systems humanity had forced into existence. Far beyond known space, the observers watched. They did not return, not because humanity was perfect, but because humanity had proven something rare, that a species could gain the power to dominate, and choose, again and again, not to. As the galaxy moved forward under its own weight, one truth became legend, whispered from world to world. Humanity was never the galaxy's shield. They were its test. And for now, the galaxy had passed. The future, uncertain and fragile, stretched open at last. And this time, it would not be guarded. It would be earned. The galaxy learned how fragile peace really was when the humans stopped holding the line. Not because humanity vanished, not because the gates closed, but because no one could pretend anymore. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had no single shadow to hide beneath. No empire to blame. No conqueror to resist. No protector to rely on. Humanity had stepped back, and the silence they left behind was louder than any fleet. At first, things held. Treaties signed during the era of protection remained in force. Trade moved smoothly through the shared gate network. Coalition defense councils met on schedule. Joint patrols flew with careful discipline. Observers called it a success. Human commanders called it the calm before strain. Commander Hale had returned to Earth, though returned was a generous word. Hale remained connected to every major system, every council, every warning array humanity had helped create. Humanity had stepped into parity, but they had not become blind. The first fracture appeared in a place no one expected. A minor border dispute between two mid-tier powers, old rivals, quiet enemies, flared over a resource-rich system once considered irrelevant. No humans were present. No gates nearby. Just pride, scarcity, and memory. Shots were fired. The incident was small, contained, easily managed. But it mattered, because for the first time since humanity's arrival, violence happened without human response. The galaxy watched carefully. When nothing happened, relief spread. Then imitation followed. Elsewhere, a blockade, a sanction, a defensive repositioning. Each action stayed just within the boundaries of the new rules. Each one tested how far those rules could bend. Coalition leadership noticed immediately. These are probes, one analyst warned. Not attacks. Commander Hale agreed. They're measuring what fear replaces when power steps aside. Humanity did not intervene. That was the hardest part. Weeks passed. The probes became sharper. Economic pressure collapsed a border world. A proxy fleet vanished under suspicious circumstances. No one claimed responsibility. The galaxy began to whisper again. Not about humanity's power, about humanity's absence. Some coalition leaders began to regret their independence. Others argued that this was the price of adulthood among the stars. Debates turned heated. Old insecurities resurfaced. Human advisors watched, spoke less, and documented everything. Then came the crisis. A major trade nexus, once stabilized by human infrastructure, suffered a catastrophic failure. Not sabotage, not attack, neglect. Maintenance protocols had been deferred to save resources. Oversight committees argued too long. Redundancies were quietly removed. The nexus collapsed in a cascade of gravitational instability. Millions died. The galaxy froze. For the first time since the observer's departure, panic was universal. Empires blamed the coalition. The coalition blamed shared governance. Smaller powers demanded humanity step back in. Humanity did not move. Commander Hale addressed the coalition privately. "You asked for a future," Hale said. "This is what it looks like when it breaks." Silence followed. "We can fix this," a counselor pleaded. "You have the tools, the knowledge." "Yes," Hale replied. "And if we do, what happens the next time?" No one answered. Because everyone knew. If humanity fixed it, the galaxy would wait for humanity again. The choice became clear and unbearable. Humanity offered a compromise. Not intervention. Accountability. They released the full chain of failure. Every deferred decision. Every ignored warning. Every vote taken for convenience instead of resilience. Nothing was hidden. No names were softened. The galaxy recoiled. Governments fell within days. Leaders resigned or fled. Populations demanded answers from those who had grown comfortable under borrowed stability. It was not a rebellion. It was reckoning. Coalition worlds reorganized emergency councils overnight. Maintenance fleets were rebuilt. Shared responsibilities suddenly became very real, very expensive. And slowly, painfully, something changed. The galaxy stopped asking what humanity would do. They started asking what they would allow. Pirate activity dropped, not because of fear of bombers, but because enforcement finally worked together. Border disputes cooled as escalation costs became impossible to hide. Proxy wars failed under transparency no one could manipulate anymore. Humanity watched it all, not with pride, with caution. Commander Hale convened the last human strategic council. "Our role is ending," Hale said, "not because we are done, but because the test is no longer ours to administer." "What if they fail?" one strategist asked. Hale did not hesitate. "Then they fail honestly." Human bombers were decommissioned, not dismantled, but sealed. Their control keys distributed across multiple galactic councils. Unusable without consensus so broad it bordered on impossible. Builders became teachers. Commanders became historians. Humanity shifted from presence to memory. The galaxy felt the loss more than it expected, not because humanity ruled, but because humanity had been consistent. Consistency, it turned out, was rare. Years passed. The galaxy did not become peaceful, but it became deliberate. Wars were shorter, fewer, more costly politically than militarily. Collapse still happened, but recovery followed faster, driven by systems humanity had insisted be shared, not owned. Coalition space thrived, not as an empire, but as a reference point. A reminder of what preparation looked like when it wasn't enforced at gunpoint. Far beyond known space, the observers continued to watch. They noticed the failures. They noticed the restraint. They noticed that when humanity could have stepped forward again, they didn't. The observers recorded something new. A civilization that taught itself to stand. The final human broadcast was not dramatic. No warning. No declaration. Just a quiet message archived across the galaxy. We answered a request once, it read. We will not answer it again. Not because we don't care, but because now you do. The coalition marked the day not as an ending, but a beginning. Children grew up hearing stories not of human bombers, but of human builders. Of commanders who taught instead of ruled. Of a species that arrived when the galaxy was desperate, and left before it could become dependent. In time, humanity became something stranger than myth. They became precedent. And in a galaxy shaped by that precedent, one truth endured. Protection given forever is not protection. It is postponed. Humanity had done the hardest thing any power ever could. They had let go. And in doing so, they gave the galaxy its first real chance to survive itself. The final chapter had not yet been written. But for the first time, it would not be written by humans alone. The galaxy did not remember humanity as conquerors. That memory would have been easier. Instead, humanity became something far more unsettling. A reference point. Years passed after the last human broadcast. Decades in some regions. The stories did not fade. They hardened. Not into legend, but into doctrine. Military academies studied human restraint as carefully as ancient battles. Economists analyzed the Gate era the way priests once studied holy texts. Every major power asked the same quiet question. What happens when the precedent is tested again? The answer came slowly. Then all at once. It began on the far rim, beyond coalition space, in systems humanity had never directly touched. A rising power called the Virex Accord unified 6 species through economic leverage and ideological discipline. They did not build fleets to conquer. They built certainty. Their doctrine was elegant and dangerous, stability through enforced alignment. Worlds joined willingly, or found themselves isolated, starved of trade, cut off from shared infrastructure. It was not war. It was suffocating. The galaxy hesitated. No treaties were broken. No fleets crossed borders. The Virex Accord operated entirely within the rules humanity had helped establish. That was the problem. Coalition councils debated endlessly. Some argued intervention was needed. Others warned that acting now would undermine everything humanity had stepped back to preserve. Humanity watched. They said nothing. The Virex Accord expanded. Worlds joined out of fear, not loyalty. Cultures flattened. Dissent quietly disappeared behind administrative language. Stability rose. Freedom declined. The galaxy felt a familiar chill. This was not chaos. This was ordered without choice. Coalition citizens began to ask an unspoken question. Is this what happens when no one holds the line? Pressure mounted on humanity to respond. Not officially, no one dared demand it, but through 1,000 indirect channels. Requests for guidance. Invitations to observe. Appeals wrapped in nostalgia. Humanity refused them all. Commander Hale, now long removed from active command, observed the Virex expansion with measured concern. They're exploiting the rules, a human analyst said. Perfectly. Yes, Hale replied. That was always the risk. What do we do? Hale did not answer immediately. Because this time, humanity did not get to decide alone. The first resistance did not come from fleets. It came from teachers. In a coalition world recently pressured by the Virex Accord, educators introduced a new historical curriculum. Not propaganda. No warnings. Case studies. Human history. The Gate era. The trade nexus collapsed. The cost of deferred responsibility. The slow erosion that begins when stability replaces consent. Students asked questions their leaders had avoided. Workers began organizing, not rebellions, but audits. Cultural councils demanded autonomy clauses. Trade guilds pushed back against exclusive agreements. The Virex Accord responded calmly. They tightened requirements, increased efficiency, removed uncooperative administrators. Still no violence. But resistance spread. Worlds that had once begged humanity for protection now spoke with their own voices. They referenced human precedent openly, not as a threat, but as justification. We were taught better than this. The galaxy watched something unprecedented unfold. A containment without force. The Virex Accord faced a choice they had never planned for. Escalate and reveal themselves. Or adapt and lose control. They chose escalation. A coordinated economic purge targeted dozens of dissenting worlds simultaneously. Supply lines vanished. Energy credits froze. Starvation loomed. This time, the coalition did not debate. They acted. Joint fleets mobilized, not to attack Virex space, but to escort civilian convoys through neutral corridors. Trade networks rerouted manually, inefficiently, painfully. Human-built systems strained, but held. The Virex Accord protested loudly, accusing the coalition of destabilization. Humanity remained silent. Then the Virex made their mistake. They accused humanity. Publicly, they claimed the entire resistance was a delayed human manipulation, that the precedent itself was a weapon, that humanity had poisoned the galaxy with false expectations. The accusation backfired, because humanity responded. Once, Commander Hale authorized a single transmission, broadcast openly, unedited. "We are not intervening," Hale said. "We are not coordinating. We are not guiding this response." A pause. "But if you believe the idea of consent is a weapon," Hale continued, "then you have already admitted what you are." The galaxy heard the truth in that silence. The Virex Accord fractured within weeks. Not through war. Through refusal. Member worlds withdrew compliance. Administrators resigned en masse. Economic pressure lost coherence when too many systems stopped pretending it was acceptable. The Accord collapsed without a single shot fired. The galaxy did not celebrate. They reflected. Coalition historians marked the moment quietly. This was the first major galactic crisis resolved without human force, yet shaped unmistakably by human influence. Humanity had not returned. They had been remembered. Years later, the observers returned, not physically, not directly, but through a final transmission, received only by humanity. "The pattern persists," it said. Without enforcement. Hale stood alone as the message arrived. "We didn't design it to need us," Hale replied. "You removed yourselves from the equation," the observers said. "Why?" Hale answered honestly. "Because the moment they need us forever," Hale said, "they stop becoming themselves." The observers processed. "Then this galaxy has crossed a threshold." "What threshold?" Hale asked. "From survival to stewardship." The transmission ended. Humanity did not share it. They didn't need to. The galaxy was already changing. Not toward peace. Toward responsibility. Children across coalition space learned history differently now. Not as a record of who won, but who chose restraint when victory was easy. Humanity became a case study, not a myth. And that was the most dangerous legacy of all. Because myths inspire awe, but examples demand imitation. The galaxy did not ask humanity for protection again. Not because humanity wouldn't answer, but because the galaxy had learned something harder than fear. It had learned to stand without being held. And somewhere, deep in the shared archives of 1,000 civilizations, one sentence was preserved above all others. They did not save us. They showed us how not to destroy ourselves. The story did not end there. But from that moment forward, it no longer needed a protector, only participants. And that was the future humanity had sent all along.